All right, everybody, another edition of Believe in Eagles 5-0. The Birds are back this week against the Jets. We'll take a quick look back at their win against the Rams. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Eytan Shander is a familiar voice and face in the Philly market, and he's going to be joining me on these Wednesdays as we take a look. We record this on Wednesdays. Don't forget, like, rate, review, subscribe, and watch us right here on the Believe Network. Eytan, baby, 5-0. But it doesn't feel like 5-0, man. It doesn't feel like
no, you're right, man. It doesn't feel like 5-0 at all, Mike. And I think it's not just the typical trying to find something negative in everything that happens in Philadelphia sports. I think that there's some real tangible issues with this team. But look, credit the Philadelphia Eagles for still winning games. I mean, honestly, the only team that truly looks unblemished at this point is arguably San Francisco. Even the Chiefs, they go down. They lose to Detroit week 1. They didn't look great against the Jets. You know, you have Kelsey hurt. Like every team, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Look at the Cowboys. Look at other Vikings are non-existent. So credit the Philly. As much as we'd love to look at some negative things and kind of point some holes and stuff, even with doing that, the Philadelphia Eagles have survived. And it's awesome to see. But at the same time, you kind of wait and think, like, how long can this keep going?
All right, so let's take a look back quick to the Rams game. They kind of dominate time of possession. They get the 2 sacks from Reddick late. I thought that was a big thing there. They sucked in the defense sucked them in the first half. Or excuse me, the Rams offense sucked them in the first half. They kind of went up and down the field. They got the Eagles kind of all over the place. And then the Eagles made some adjustments. I think they got more pressure, and that was the big difference there. You take a look at what they did defensively in the second half of that game. If they can play like that, that's their recipe.
Yeah, I think the issue that's been going on, and look, you're going to have a good chance to correct that this week, is consistency on defense. We saw Hassan Reddick. We just saw guys make plays, one-on-one individual plays, and that's going to be huge. So moving forward, if the offense does sputter like we saw in the second half without a touchdown, I know you have Jake Elliott, the man of the NFL right now, MVP candidate, Jake Elliott right now.
What are the odds on that?
Seriously, I mean, look, I would put a sprinkle at this point. If the Eagles go undefeated at this rate and Jalen Hurts is not dominating from a statistical standpoint, I mean, how could you ignore? But no, the reality is that you have now a defense that, while Sean Desai is the defensive coordinator, much like last year with Jonathan Gannon, not quite dominant from a coaching standpoint. But look, I think the players have been. You've got a defensive front that you can rotate guys in. You've got guys who should be able to make one-on-one plays against opposing offensive linemen. And to your point about last week in that second half, look, there's no reason, Mike, that this defense should not be able to pick right back up against this Jets offense, against that offensive line, against that quarterback, and continue that level of pressure that we saw successfully, mind you, in the second half.
Yeah, look, to me, the Eagles defense, they are everything relies on that front. If they get pressure, they generally will win. The Washington game, they didn't get the pressure. They end up winning that game, but that's why Washington was in that game. Yeah. The Eagles defense is predicated on making the other team go 9, 10, 11, 12 plays, kill clock, have to go all the way down the field, and then give up only 3 and not 6. Washington was able to get 6 in that game. But generally, the Eagles, they did it last week. The first drive, they went down and scored the Rams. Second time, they go down and score. But after that, these long drives turn into mistakes, penalties, punts. And the Eagles will say, you can have 8, 9-play drives, but if you only get 3, we win. And that's all predicated on their front. Jalen Carter's a man-child.
Yeah, man.
If I'm the Detroit Lions, I'm sick to my stomach that I trade to draft a running back in the first round. They could have had him at 9, 8. They trade it, and the Bears take the pick, and they don't take him. But I'm more sick to my stomach if I'm the Lions, who could have had Jalen Carter, because that Lions team is pretty good. And if we're talking about the hierarchy of the NFC, they may have passed Dallas.
Detroit?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I get it. I'm curious to see what happens. I don't want to go too far off the beaten path here, but I think Detroit is actually live to be upset this weekend because of what we just saw last week, how week to week these things are. But look, Dallas just got, but look, I'll come back to you and where you are right now. Dallas got knocked down a peg. Like, you can't be talked about as one of the top teams in the NFC, go up against San Francisco, who is now the or one of the top two teams in the NFC, and get humiliated like they did. So yeah, I think right now there's probably still a gap between San Fran, Philadelphia, and the rest of the teams, but Detroit is definitely ahead of Dallas. Long term, I think we have to wait and see just what Detroit can do in this season, because I bet if they lose this week or if they struggle this week, people may put them back down again. But even when Dallas wins this week, which I do think they will on Monday night, come on, man, you can't lose that bad to San Fran and still be a contender.
We talked about it a little bit last week, but I'll bring it back up with you, man. They are just not a tough-minded team, and that's the problem. They might win 12 games. Yeah, they might win 12, 13 games, but in the end, it's that punch in the face that they just don't handle very well. Let's look at the Eagles' offense in the game against the Rams. You know, Brown 100 yards, Goddard 100 yards. Swift had 6 catches. I thought that was an interesting stat, but we saw Hurts lead the team in rushing. So it felt more like a 2022 Eagles game offensively, even though they didn't score a whole heck of a lot like they would this year.
No, I thought it was good. You know, that was a big thing for me, was to have a little bit more of a mobile Hurts, even if that meant kind of moving the pocket a little bit around to kind of get his feet working. Not that they needed it so much, but this is now, I think, the best or easiest way to counter what teams on defense are going to try to do, which is hang back, maybe limit the pass rush, force Jalen Hurts to make some throws underneath middle. You saw 2 things that kind of countered that right away, right? One was just working Dallas Goedert and getting him the ball ASAP. And the other one was being able, at least having the option to move around and to get a little open with your feet if you're Jalen Hurts. And look, I don't know, Mike, if that was something that was talked about ahead of time or if that was just something where the game kind of came to him, but that was huge. And I think that's going to continue to be big moving forward.
Yeah, I love the fact that they got all the weapons kind of. Now, Smith didn't get going. I mean, you got a variety of guys. Yeah, I mean, I think Smith will have his week against the Jets this week, actually. But the offensive line is what makes it go. How many teams is the offensive line the star of the team when they have A.J. Brown, Goddard, Smith, and Swift, and Hurts? And yet, to me, this team is what they are because of the offensive line. Because you take a look all around the league, and you look at the Rams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Tutu Atwell. They've got a great quarterback in Stafford, but they can't. The line stinks, and without the line, those guys can't do what they want to do.
No, it definitely. I think we take it for granted to an extent, right? Like, everybody's aware these guys are putting.
Well, we lost Eytan there for a second. We'll try to bring him back in here to believe in the Eagles and continue our conversation as we move forward to the Eagles and the Jets here in just a second. But one of the things that we were discussing is the fact that there he is.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. I'm on one of these new phones where it's like the camera is perfect. The mic is meant to be studio. You know, you see these commercials where they're shooting a movie on a phone, right? It's like, this is a major motion. Yet some spam called me just now and it totally derailed what we're doing. So, yeah, bullshit. You keep your nonsense.
You just went all Rams offense in the second half.
Unbelievable. Eagles offense, too, minus Jake Elliott. Look, the offensive line, to your point, I know we're talking about that real quick. These guys are putting out Christmas albums like Jason Kelsey. They're in commercials and stuff. But we still, I think, take them for granted when we talk about just why ultimately this team is so successful. And look, you said it. I don't want to, reiterate or just follow up anything you say. I think you laid out the point, which is you start to look around other teams in the NFL. And when you mention the top 3 reasons why they are so successful, I don't think any team, to your point, I think you said that, no team can say that their offensive line is a top 3 reason except Philadelphia.
That's it right there.
Yeah.
So big picture, this team is 5-0. And really, no team has started 6-0 after going to the Super Bowl and losing. They would be just the fourth team to do it. The 72 Dolphins, the 75 Vikings, and the 81 Eagles. So they're looking to become the fourth team to go 6-0. But so many teams go to the Super Bowl, and then we see them struggle. So I think it's a testament that the Eagles at 5-0, not playing their best, are still what they are after after last year's run.
Yeah, so I was looking at that, and when you look back at teams that win as well, that win and lose the Super Bowl, the biggest thing that derails them, injury, there's always going to be injury, right? Like if somebody gets hurt, oh my God, that happens.
But they've had some injury issues this year, and they've gotten through them.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right. I think the biggest ones would be Jason Kelsey, Lane, Johnson.
If they lost those guys.
Jalen Hurts, right? Like you lose Jalen Hurts, you're cooked. I get that. But outside of injury, Mike, what happens? And look, to be fair, they lost a couple of guys, but usually what happens is that as a player who's on a team, more often on a loser than a Super Bowl winner, looks around and says, "Man, I played a lot of football. My contract is up or coming up. I can get a deal. I'm hitting free agency or I'm pushing to get out." And teams lose players, or at least the team is okay with losing players. And honestly, when you look at who left and who came in, either through free agency or the draft, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're not impacted by that at all, except on the positive. To your, we talked about Jalen Carter. So they got better in an offseason where they lost the Super Bowl, and a bunch of guys didn't just race out of here to get the bag elsewhere.
Yeah, how many teams could lose a player of Javon Hargrave's, impact, and not one person has mentioned, "Oh man, they should have brought Hargrave back." You don't even remember he was here last year. So that's one thing. Two, you lost Maddox, and you have somehow been able to piece it together. I think they're trying to figure out what they want to do. Bradley Roby's here now. Will they still try to find a veteran? You lost a safety. You lost both your starting safeties last year, with C.J. Gardner-Johnson leaving and Marcus Epps leaving, and somehow your safeties haven't been an issue to this point. You lost both your starting linebackers and the linebacker position. Then you lose the guy, Nakobe Dean, who you thought was going to be the main guy. He's been out. So they have really persevered some key injuries to spots that were already question marks and been able to not have that interfere. They lose Juergens, who is now really, you had Sayamala. Then you had a battle really in training camp for that spot. Now he's out. You got Opeta in there, and he has to go up against Aaron Donald in the first game. And it's been amazing how they have had some injuries, and they still have been able to get past them. But that shows the depth of the top end of the roster.
Yeah, man. And look, when you're losing guys like Cam Juergens, right? He's 5 of 5, maybe 4 of 5 on his best day when you rank these offensive linemen. Doesn't take away what he's able to do on the field. He's a starter for a reason, but it's easier. It's not a lot easier, but it's easier for Opeta to come in and replace Cam Juergens than X able to come in and replace Lane Johnson. So it's a combination of luck, but it's also a combination of roster building. It's a combination of there really isn't that much gap between a guy who can come in and replace an injured or departed guy and the guy who left. And you know what? Maybe we don't say that if Devontae Smith goes down for 6 weeks. Maybe we don't say that, right, if Darius Slay goes down 6 weeks. I know we're not going to say that if Jake Elliott goes down 6 weeks. It's a credit, though, man, to like where Howie Roseman can maneuver in this roster and where he can get guys that are pinch hitters, bench players, seventh men, if you want to use cross-sport analogies. This team is built so well when it comes to guys who are not starting that, again, like, I don't know if you can find that level of depth. I know I'm starting to sound like PJ Carlissimo the more I yell, but I don't know if you can find that level of depth elsewhere in the NFL. Like, I really don't.
All right, let's take a look at some intangibles in this game. We mentioned the Eagles are looking to become the fourth team to start 6-0. After losing the Super Bowl, it's only been done 3 times. They've also never lost to the Jets. How about that number? They have never lost a game to the Jets. They are 12-0 against the New York Jets, and this will be the 10th different starting quarterback for the Eagles It'll be Jalen Hurts' chance to beat the Jets now. And this Jets team is very interesting. They were a team that had a lot of hype. 4 plays in, they lose Rodgers. Now they got Zach Wilson. Breece Hall, 177 yards last week. He's looking to become the first Jet with 100 rushing yards in consecutive games since 2015. But, of course, the Eagles are the best team against the rush. So does this game go into Wilson's hands? He's completed 70% of his passes in consecutive games. Is he starting to feel himself a little bit? Is this game competitive? Do the Jets stick around? Or is this the 13th straight time the Eagles beat the Jets?
Look, I was trying to find some.
Before I get to that, Eytan, the Eagles are favored 7 as we record, over under 40.
Right. So I'm glad you brought that up, because this line was around 6, I think, for maybe a minute. I don't even know if it technically opened domestically at 6, but it was at 6.5. Maybe it was at something along that lines. It finally hit 7. I think normally you'll find some sort of buyback when you get to a key number like 7. You think, oh, well, the Jets, they're at home, and the defense and all the different things that you can point to. But in reality right now, the 2 biggest things that jump out to me are, and it's questions, right? Like, okay, if you think the Jets can keep this within 7, forget win the game, but they can keep this within 7, they're going to have to cause some mistakes on the Philadelphia Eagles side, which, okay, we've seen at times, and they do have a defense that's good enough, I think, to get in the way, at least, of Philadelphia. But it's a parlay of circumstances. So the other thing is Zach Wilson and this offense, they are going to have to keep up with Philadelphia. Look, we just saw this scenario play out. We just saw 2 teams where one team's defense was good enough, at least on paper, coming in to slow down a juggernaut on offense. But the question was, can their quarterback keep up? Well, we know now that if and when Carolina had a bad day on defense, their quarterback couldn't do jack you-know-what to keep up with Detroit. They got blown out of the building. The same exact scenario here. On paper, the Jets defense should be good enough to slow down the Eagles. On paper, the Jets defense should be able to cause the turnover, maybe even 2. But where in this offense against the Eagles defense, it's not going to be Hall. Hall had 70-something yards on 1 run, remember, last week. So I don't think the Jets have anything in their stable to keep up. A couple of big plays, a couple of scores, Mike Gill. Next thing you know, it's a 10-point lead. It's a 14-point lead. It's a 17-point lead. It's a 27-point lead. Wow. I don't know if they win by that much, but I'm saying is the Jets don't have the ability to stop the bleeding on offense.
Yeah, look, the Jets defense is pretty good. I think it'll be a fun matchup for Sauce Gardner if he's matched up with A.J. Brown a lot. And by the way, Quincy Williams is pretty good against Devonta Smith. But DJ Reed being out, their safety, their linebackers are solid too. So I think it's going to be a fun, interesting game. But in the end, I like what you talked about. I think the Eagles just demoralize them on the ground and just pound them and pound them and pound them and say, look, those corners, we're going to take them out of the game. We're going to make them insignificant, and we're going to run right at you. And I think the Eagles will have a typical Eagles game where they just run, wear you down, control the clock. And your point is valid. I mean, to me, Zach Wilson, he's getting better, but they are just limiting him so much. He didn't even throw for over 200 yards in the game last week. So, and look, the biggest storyline, let's go like a Seinfeld episode. We'll go all the way back to the beginning. The Eagles' offensive line is number 1. The Jets might be last. Their line stinks. Vera Tucker out, too. Their line's already bad, and now they lose one of the few guys on that line that can block. I think it's a long day for Wilson. 2 picks, sacks. It's like the New York sack exchange is back. Where's Mark Gastineau? Joe Klecko. But it's going to be the Eagle green getting all over. I think this is a mismatch in terms of upfront talent. So I love prop bets for Eagles. If you go Reddick sack, you'll almost get that 75% of the time. And I've been throwing money on Jalen Carter sack. And this is another game where I love both those plays. In this one, I also like DeAndre Smith. Man, the DeAndre Swift and Devonta Smith are killing me.
I know.
Smith, Devontae Smith, I like him on the over yardage this week as well.
Okay. Look, I think if you're looking at a couple of plays that jump out, touchdowns are going to be big here, especially because I don't necessarily, you mentioned the total, it's sitting at 41.
We lost Eytan. We'll try to pop him back in. And, of course, we'll be doing this every Wednesday, Believe in Eagles, and getting you ready for that Eagles-Jets game this week. As I mentioned, I like the Eagles in the game. I think it's a little bit of a mismatch there. He was just about ready to bring up the over 41. No, Mike. Your mic is off.
I don't know why.
Would you get another 41? What, did PJ Carlson call you and said you're impersonating him?
Yeah, I got a cease and desist from PJ Carlissimo just now on the other line. No.
Yeah, no volume. We got no volume from you, Eytan. No volume from Eytan as we try to get his pick here. I hear him talking about 41 is the number. That's the over-under in the game. So we will try to pull him back into the conversation here as we finish up on Believe in Eagles as they get ready for the Jets this week. I like the Eagles, by the way, this week. What the line is 7-41. I kind of like the Eagles because I think they'll win the game, say 27-7, 27-6, something like that, 24. I don't know that the Eagles are going to score a whole heck of a lot. I think they're going to run the ball a lot, keep the ball away from the Jets. Not that they really have to. You don't have to be worried about the Jets' offense all that much. But I think the Eagles' offense keeps the Jets off the field because they're going to run the ball a lot. And that number, I would probably go with the under there. So let's see what
41.
Yes.
Right?
That's 41. We picked you up right there.
There we go. See, I knew it was just a matter of timing there. Look, I think for me, absolutely, touchdown scoring will be at a premium. Or not maybe at a premium in the sense of like you're not going to get a ton of them right there. So the two guys that I would target would be, and again, pick up what worked. You mentioned no safety, at least not a lot of help from the safeties on the Jets. Outside, yes. I think Dallas Goedert and DeAndre Swift are two guys that I want to target for anytime scores. We just saw this with George Kittle and the Niners exploiting a spot for the Dallas Cowboys defense. I would put a little sprinkle, maybe it's a quarter unit, Mike, on 2 touchdowns for Dallas Goedert. Like if I had an introductory bet, maybe a link or two at a book below that we'd have for you. And I think, okay, first bet, I may get back up to $100 or whatever it may be. I would put a sprinkle on Dallas Goedert to get 2 touchdowns. I think the middle of the field, especially deep middle, yes, sir, is going to be open and exploitable at the very least.
All right, Eytan Shander, Wednesdays here on Believe in Eagles. We'll have another freshie for you. Eagles.
I'll be at home next week. Don't worry, I promise.
Hopefully he'll be at home. Tell the people.
I promise.
Tell the people where they can find you.
At Shander Show on Twitter. Odd Shopper YouTube page is the best place. That's where I do a lot of stuff. And now here with you. I'm excited. Believe in the Eagles, brother.
We are believing in them right now. 5-0. They'll beat the Jets. They'll get to 6-0. We'll talk about it next week. All right, brother. We'll talk to you.
See ya.
Another edition of Believe in the Eagles. Like, rate, review, subscribe, and watch us right here on the Believe Network. Take care, everybody.